Vampire King's wolf pup suffered every day, until new Maid found something horrifying in his fur. She was hired to scrub floors. She was told never to enter the East Wing. She was warned specifically about the wolf pup, the small grey creature the Vampire King kept chained to the foot of his throne. Don't touch it. Don't feed it. Don't look at it too long. But on her third night in Castle Valdris, Sarah found the pup convulsing in a hallway, its silver fur matted with something black and wet that moved against her fingers. Not blood, not mud. Thorns, living thorns, burrowed beneath its skin, feeding on it from the inside. And when she pulled the first one free, the pup didn't howl. It shifted, bones cracked, fur receded, and in her arms lay a boy, 4, maybe 5 years old, with the Vampire King's unmistakable black eyes. The thorns were killing the king's son. Someone in the castle had planted them, and the only person who knew how to remove them, because she'd been raised by the hedge witches who grew them, was the maid everyone would now want dead. This is the story of how Sarah saved a child, broke a curse, and fell in love with a king who had forgotten how. The smell hit her first. Not the sulfur and iron she'd been warned about, not the decay that supposedly clung to vampire strongholds. It was cold stone and white heather, sharp, clean, almost medicinal, as if someone had scrubbed every surface of Castle Valdris with alpine flowers and then frozen them in place. The scent sat in the back of her throat as Sarah followed the head housekeeper, a rigid woman named Margot, through the servants' corridor. You will address no one above your station. You will complete your rotation before the 4th bell. You will not linger in hallways, Margot said without turning, and you will not enter the East Wing. Yes, ma'am, the East Wing belongs to His Majesty, King Castiel, his private chambers, his throne hall, his wolf. Sarah adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder. His wolf? Margot stopped. The heather scent thickened. Sarah would learn later that it came from the soap they used on the throne room floor. The only soap that masked another smell, one no servant wanted to name. A grey pup, Margot said, chained at the base of his throne. You will not look at it. You will not speak to it. You will not feed it. The creature is the king's business and no one else's. She paused. The last maid who touched it was dismissed within the hour. Understood. Good. Margot resumed walking. Your rotation begins tonight. Sarah spent her first 2 nights scrubbing the western gallery, her knees aching against stone, the heather scent constant and the silence enormous. She saw no vampires, she heard no wolves. She worked alone, wrung her cloth, and returned to her cot in the basement quarters, where 12 other maids slept in narrow rows. She told herself she was grateful. The coin was good. The work was honest. She had left the hedgelands with nothing and no one, and this was enough. On the 3rd night, she heard the sound. Not a howl, a wheeze, thin, wet, stuttering, coming from the corridor between the western gallery and the threshold of the East Wing. Sarah set down her bucket. She knew the boundary. The marble shifted from white to black at the East Wing's entrance, and she could see the dark stone from where she knelt. The wheeze came again. Closer. She stood. She walked to the boundary. She looked down. The pup lay on its side, half on white marble, half on black. Its body convulsed in small, rhythmic spasms, ribs visible through matted silver fur. Its chain, a thin iron tether, trailed behind it into the darkness of the East Wing, pulled taut as if the creature had dragged itself as far as the leash allowed. Sarah crouched. Oh, little one. The pup's eyes opened, black, enormous, wet with pain. It wheezed again, and its hind leg kicked once, involuntary. She reached out. Her fingers touched the fur along its spine, and the heather scent vanished, replaced by something acrid and green, the unmistakable smell of hedge thorns, the toxic barbed seeds her grandmother had taught her to identify before she could read. She parted the fur. Her stomach dropped. Thorns. Dozens of them. Black, barbed, alive. Burrowed into the pup's skin in deliberate rows. their roots pulsing faintly with each of the creature's labored breaths. They were feeding, growing, spreading. This was not natural. Hedge thorns didn't burrow into animals unless they were planted by someone who knew the old craft. "Who did this to you?" she whispered. The pup whimpered. Sarah closed her fingers around the nearest thorn, felt it resist, felt its barb grip the flesh beneath the fur, and pulled. It came free with a soft, wet sound, and the pup yelped once, then went rigid. Bones cracked, not breaking, shifting. The spine elongated, the skull reshaped. The fur receded in patches, revealing pale skin, small fingers, a child's jaw. Sarah scrambled backward but didn't let go of the pup. The child, the small, trembling body that was suddenly half wolf and half boy, caught between forms, shaking in her arms. Then the shift completed. The fur disappeared, and she was holding a child, a boy, 4 or 5 years old, naked, shivering, his dark hair plastered to his forehead and his black eyes staring up at her with the same wet, agonized expression. "Please," the boy whispered. "They hurt." Sarah looked at his skin. The remaining thorns stood out against his pale chest, black and barbed, their roots visibly moving, threading deeper. She recognized the pattern now. Binding thorns, used by hedge witches to suppress a shifting bloodline. Someone had deliberately locked this child in wolf form and seeded him with a poison designed to feed on his magic until it killed him. "I know how to take them out," she said. Her voice shook. "But I need you to hold still. Can you do that?" He nodded. She worked quickly, extracting each thorn with the precise counter-twist her grandmother had drilled into her hands since childhood. 7, 12, 19. Each one she dropped on the marble, where it curled and blackened and died. The boy cried silently, tears tracking down his hollow cheeks, but he didn't move. When the last thorn came free, his body sagged, and the heather scent returned, clean, sharp, flooding the corridor. "What is your name?" Sarah asked. "Wren." His eyes were closing. "Papa calls me Wren." The sound of boots on marble. Sarah looked up. King Castiel stood at the threshold of the east wing, and he was nothing she had imagined. Tall, yes, the doorframe barely cleared his head. Pale, yes, the bloodless ivory of old vampiric bloodlines. But his face was not cruel. It was wrecked. Black eyes identical to the child's, fixed on the boy in her arms, wide with something she could only call terror. "What have you done?" His voice was low, rough, scraped, raw. "Your Majesty." Sarah tightened her grip on Wren. "Your son had thorns, hedge thorns, planted under his skin. They were killing him." I removed them. Castiel didn't move. His gaze dropped to the pile of blackened thorns on the marble, then to Wren, then to Sarah's hands, still stained green with hedge sap. "You know what those are," he said. "Not a question." "Yes." No one in this castle has been able to identify them. 4 physicians, 2 mages, a specialist from the southern court. He took 1 step forward. "Who are you?" "Sarah. I was hired 3 days ago. I scrubbed the western gallery. You're a hedge witch. I was raised by one." "I'm not one myself." His jaw tightened. She watched him process. The green on her hands, the dead thorns, the fact that his son, who had been trapped in wolf form for what she now suspected was months, was lying in human shape in a stranger's arms. "Put him down," Castiel said. "He's asleep." "I said, put him down." Sarah lowered Wren gently to the marble. The boy whimpered in his sleep, and his small hand caught her wrist, gripping hard. Castiel watched this. His expression fractured, just for a moment, before the mask returned. "You will come with me," he said. "Now." He didn't take her to a cell. He took her to the throne hall, a vast, cold room with a single iron seat on a raised dais. The chain was there, bolted to the throne's base, its collar empty. Castiel carried Wren against his chest, one hand cradling the boy's head, and set him on a low couch near the fire. He removed his own cloak and covered the child. Then he turned. "Tell me what the thorns were doing." Sarah stood at the foot of the dais, her hands clasped, the green sap drying on her skin. Binding thorns suppress a shifter's ability to change form. But these were inverted. They locked the shift in the wrong direction. They forced a partial transformation and held it. The thorns fed on the magic maintaining that form, which means they were feeding on him. His body was consuming itself. How long? Based on the root depth? Months. Perhaps since the beginning. Castiel's hands curled at his sides. She watched his knuckles whiten. His mother was a wolf. She died in childbed. When Ren began shifting at 2 years old, I brought in a specialist to help him control it. Dr. Varren. He said the episodes would stabilize. Instead, 3 months ago, Ren shifted and didn't come back. Varren said the wolf form had taken over, that there was no cure. Dr. Varren lied to you. Silence. The fire cracked. The heather scent curled between them. You understand, Castiel said carefully, that if you are wrong, or if you planted those thorns yourself to manufacture a crisis and position yourself near my son, I will kill you. I understand. Sarah held his gaze. But I'd like you to consider that I was on my knees scrubbing a floor when I found him. If I wanted to position myself near your son, I would have chosen a less damp introduction. Something moved behind his eyes. Not amusement. He was too raw for that. But the mask slipped again, just enough for her to see exhaustion beneath it, vast and old. You will remain in the castle, he said. Under guard. If Ren's condition improves, we will talk further. If it doesn't, this conversation becomes your last. Understood, Your Majesty. Castiel. He said it abruptly, as if correcting a mistake. Then quieter, if you saved my son, you will not call me Your Majesty. Ren's condition improved. Within 2 days, the boy was sitting upright, eating solid food, speaking in full sentences. He asked for Sarah by name. He asked for her every morning, every evening, and once in the middle of the night when he woke screaming from a dream about thorns. Castiel permitted the visits. He did not leave the room during them. He sat in a chair by the fire, watching Sarah check Ren's skin for regrowth, watching her mix the poultices she made from kitchen herbs, not hedge magic, she explained, just basic wound care, and watching his son laugh for the first time in months. On the 4th day, Dr. Varren requested an audience. Sarah was in the throne hall, kneeling beside Ren's couch, smoothing a poultice across the boy's chest when Varren entered. He was tall, narrow-shouldered, with the affected calm of a man who had constructed an identity from authority. His gaze landed on Sarah and hardened. Your Majesty, I must object to the presence of an untrained servant providing medical care to the prince. Castiel didn't stand. The untrained servant identified in 3 minutes what you failed to diagnose in 3 months. The thorns could have been planted by her. Her background is hedgefolk. They cultivate exactly this kind of... Enough. The word cut the room in half. Varren flinched. Ren pressed closer to Sarah's side. Dr. Varren, Castiel said, you told me my son was lost. You told me the wolf had consumed the boy. You told me to grieve. And now I discover he was being tortured under your care by a method you should have recognized. Until I determine whether that failure was incompetence or design, you will not enter this room again. Varren's mouth opened, closed. His eyes found Sarah's, and in them she saw something cold and precise, not anger but calculation. He bowed and withdrew. When the door closed, Ren said, I don't like him, Papa. No, Castiel said. Neither do I. He looked at Sarah. She looked back. The heather scent filled the space between them, and for the first time she noticed how the firelight caught the hollows beneath his cheekbones, how his hands gripped the arms of his chair, how his body held the particular tension of a man who had been bracing for loss for so long that he no longer knew how to stand without it. Thank you, he said. The words came out rough, unfinished, as if there were more behind them, locked in a room he didn't trust himself to open. You're welcome, Castiel. Days became weeks. Sarah's role shifted without ceremony. She was no longer a maid, but was never given a title. She tended Ren. She mixed poultices. She sat with the boy while he slept and read to him from the castle's library. And every evening, after Wren drifted off, she sat across from Castiel in the throne hall and answered his questions about hedge magic, about thorns, about the old craft, while he studied her with those unreadable black eyes. It was during one of these evenings that he touched her for the first time. She was reaching across the table for a book, and her sleeve pulled back, revealing the old scars on her inner forearm, 3 thin white lines left by a hedge-bramble trap she'd stumbled into at 12. His hand caught her wrist, gently. His thumb paused over the scars. His skin was cool, not cold, not the corpse chill of legend, but cooler than hers, and she felt the difference like a question. "Is this all right?" he asked. His eyes were on her face, not her arm. "Yes." He turned her wrist, studied the scars, released her. "You've been hurt by the same magic that hurt him. It's how I recognized it. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. That doesn't make it better." He pulled his hand back. But the place where his thumb had rested held the ghost of that coolness for hours, long after she returned to her room, long after she pressed her own fingers to her wrist and felt the heat of her own skin in contrast and thought, dangerously, of the difference. It was Wren who forced the next step. The boy had taken to calling Sarah his name for her, Sarah mine, and one afternoon he asked her to stay the night. "Papa doesn't sleep," Wren said, "but I sleep better when you're here." She looked at Castiel. He was standing by the window, his back to the room, and she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Wren, that's a decision for your father. I would not ask you to do anything that makes you uncomfortable," Castiel said without turning. "You're not asking. Wren is." He turned then. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. "Wren has better instincts than I do. If you're willing, there is a room adjacent to his. You would have a lock on your side." "A lock on my side," she repeated. "I am a vampire, Sarah. I am aware of what that means to a human woman alone in a castle. The lock is not a suggestion. It's a promise." She moved into the adjacent room that night. She turned the lock. She pressed her forehead against the door and listened to Castiel's low voice on the other side, reading Wren a story about a wolf who found its way home. And she breathed in the heather scent and tried not to think about the coolness of his thumb against her wrist. 3 nights later, she couldn't sleep. She opened her door. The hallway was dark. She walked to the throne hall because it was the only room in the castle that felt familiar, and she found Castiel there, alone, sitting not on the throne but on the floor beside it, his back against the iron seat, his head tipped back, his eyes closed. He heard her. She knew he did. Vampire hearing missed nothing. But he didn't open his eyes. "You should be asleep," he said. "So should you." "I don't sleep. Ever?" "Not since Wren was cursed." He opened his eyes, black, deep, fixed on her in the dark. "I keep thinking if I stop watching, it will happen again." She crossed the room. She sat beside him on the cold stone floor. Their shoulders did not touch. The heather scent wrapped around them both. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yes." "When I removed the thorns and Wren shifted back, what did you feel?" Silence, a long one. Then I felt my chest open, as if something had been holding it shut for months and suddenly released. And then immediately I felt afraid, because I didn't trust it. I don't trust anything good anymore, Sarah. I can't. You trusted me with your son. I didn't trust you. I watched you. Every moment. I watched how you held him, how you spoke to him, how you never once flinched at his scars. And eventually I stopped watching out of suspicion and started watching because he stopped. Because you were the first person in this castle who treated him as a child rather than a problem. He is a child. Yes. His voice dropped. And you are not a maid. She turned her head. He was close. The coolness of his skin reached her even without contact, a faint temperature shift in the air between them. His gaze moved over her face slowly, deliberately, as if memorizing something he expected to lose. "Tell me to leave," he said, "and I will, right now, no questions." "I don't want you to leave." Tell me what you want. I want you to touch me again, the way you did before, with my wrist." He raised his hand. His fingers found her jaw, cool against warm. She felt her own pulse jump against his palm, and she knew he felt it too. His lips parted just slightly, and his breath caught in a way that was devastating because it was involuntary. "This?" he asked. "More." His thumb traced the line of her jaw to her chin. He tilted her face toward his. The heather scent was everywhere now, in his skin, in her hair, in the narrow space between their mouths. "I need you to say it clearly," he said. "I will not take anything you do not give me with words. Kiss me, Castiel." He kissed her. His mouth was cool, firm, careful. And then it wasn't. Her hand fisted in his shirt and pulled him closer, and the sound he made against her lips was low and raw, and broke something open in both of them. His hand slid from her jaw to the back of her neck. Her body arched into his. The temperature contrast, his cool skin, her flushed heat, turned every point of contact into a sharp, vivid line drawn across her nerves. He pulled back. "Sarah, don't stop. If I don't stop now, I won't be able to." "Then don't." He looked at her. She watched the decision move through him, the war between restraint and need, the moment restraint lost. He lifted her onto his lap, her knees bracketing his hips, and his hands settled on her waist, cool through the thin fabric of her nightdress. She felt the tremor in his fingers. She felt how carefully he held her, how deliberately he kept his strength in check, and it undid her more than force ever could. "I want to feel your skin," she said. "Can I?" "Yes." She pulled his shirt over his head. His chest was pale, carved, crossed with old scars she didn't expect, and cool under her palms when she pressed them flat against his sternum. His head fell back. His hands tightened on her waist. "You're warm," he murmured. I forgot what warm felt like. She leaned down and kissed the hollow of his throat. He made a sound, not a word, something deeper, something pulled from the bottom of his chest, and his hands moved, drawing her nightdress up, fingertips tracing the length of her thighs, pausing at her hips. "Tell me if anything is wrong," he said. "Tell me and I stop." "Nothing is wrong." He pulled the nightdress over her head. The cold air hit her bare skin and she gasped. And then his hands were on her, covering the cold with cool, somehow gentler than the air, his palms mapping her ribs, her waist, the curve of her breasts. She arched into his touch and felt his mouth follow his hands, lips against her collarbone, her sternum, the swell of her breast, each kiss deliberate, each one placed like a word in a sentence he was building against her skin. She reached between them and unfastened his trousers. He helped her, shifting his hips, freeing himself, and when her hand closed around him, he hissed through his teeth and gripped her hip hard enough to leave a mark he immediately softened. "Sorry, don't be sorry. I want to feel you, Sarah." Her name in his mouth was wrecked, gutted, almost prayer. "Can I?" "Yes." He lifted her, positioned her, met her eyes, held them, and let her set the pace, her hips lowering, taking him in slowly, the sensation vast and overwhelming and underscored by that constant, maddening contrast, his cool body beneath hers, her heat surrounding him, the place where they joined a line of fire drawn between two different temperatures. She moved. He met her, careful at first, then less careful, then not careful at all, his hands on her hips guiding and following at once, his mouth against her neck, her shoulder the curve of her ear. She braced her hands on his chest and felt his heartbeat, slow, deliberate, vampiric, beneath her palm, and the wrongness of that slow rhythm against the frenzy of her own pulse made her gasp, made her grind down harder, made her chase something she couldn't name. "Look at me," he said. She did. His black eyes were wide, blown, fixed on her face with an expression she would carry for the rest of her life, need and terror, and gratitude and something ferocious that had no name. "Don't close your eyes," he whispered. "Stay with me." She stayed. She watched him as she came apart, and he watched her, and when he followed, his body tensing beneath hers, his hands gripping her hips, a sound torn from his throat. She held his gaze through all of it, through the aftershocks, through the trembling, through the long, shattered silence that followed. He pressed his forehead to her collarbone. His breathing was ragged. She held the back of his head and felt the coolness of his skin begin to warm, just slightly, beneath her hands. Then he lifted her off him gently, set her beside him, stood, fastened his trousers. "I need a moment," he said. He didn't look at her. "Stay as long as you like." He left the throne hall. Sarah sat on the cold stone floor, wearing nothing, smelling heather, and pressed her hand to her chest where his heartbeat still drummed, slow and wrong and unforgettable. She didn't see him until the following evening. When she entered the throne hall with Ren on her hip, Castiel was at the fire, and his posture was rigid with something she recognized as mortification. He took Ren. He didn't meet her eyes. He spoke only to the boy. Sarah waited. After Ren was asleep, she found Castiel in the corridor. "You're avoiding me." "I'm not. You haven't looked at me since last night." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I was not. I did not intend to be so. I left abruptly. That was inexcusable. You left because you were overwhelmed. I left because I wanted to stay, and that frightened me." "Castiel." "Yes?" "Come to my room tonight." He did look at her then. The mask cracked, and behind it was not the Vampire King, but a man standing at the edge of wanting something he believed would be taken from him. "Are you certain?" "I am certain." The next morning it was Margot, of all people, who cornered Sarah in the kitchen. The head housekeeper set a cup of tea in front of her, sat down across from her and said, "He hasn't slept in 3 months. You know that." "I know." "Then exhaust him." Sarah choked on her tea. "Excuse me?" "The king is a creature of discipline. He will deny himself rest out of duty until his body fails. He needs to be rendered incapable of vigilance. You have the means. Use them." "Margot, are you telling me to—" "I am telling you that a well-bedded king is a sleeping king. This is not romantic advice. This is castle management." That night, Sarah did not wait for him to come to her. She went to his chambers. She locked the door behind her. She pushed him onto his back and watched his eyes go wide and dark and then half shut as she took control. Her mouth on his neck, his chest lower, her hands pinning his wrists, not because she was stronger, but because he let her, because he surrendered the pretense of power and gasped her name against his own arm. She took her time. She was thorough. She was relentless, and when it was over, when he was wrecked, loose-limbed, his breathing finally even, she pulled the covers over them both and pressed her back against his chest. His arm wrapped around her waist. His face settled into the curve of her neck. And he slept. She knew because his heartbeat changed, from that slow, deliberate, vampiric rhythm to something softer, something almost human. She lay awake and listened to it and felt his cool breath against her shoulder and didn't move. In the morning he was awake before her. She opened her eyes to find him propped on one elbow, watching her, his expression unguarded in a way she'd never seen. "I slept," he said, as if reporting a miracle. "You did." "I want to stay. Is that all right?" "Yes, I want to hold you. Not, I just want to hold you. Is that all right?" "Yes, Castiel." He pulled her close. They lay in silence for a long time. But something was wrong with him. She noticed it first in his hands, a tremor that worsened each night, a slight shake when he lifted Ren, when he gripped a cup, when he touched her. Then the heather scent changed, sharpened, grew a bitter edge that sat on her tongue like iron. She pressed her nose to his chest one night and smelled it, that wrongness beneath the clean surface, and her stomach tightened with recognition. "How long have you been feeling it?" she asked. He didn't pretend to misunderstand. "Since Ren was cursed. It started in my hands. It's in my chest now." She sat up. She looked at his hands in the firelight. The tremor was visible, constant. The thorns weren't just feeding on Ren. They were siphoning through the bloodline. Father to son. They were draining you. "I know." "You knew?" I suspected. The symptoms matched what my own father described before he died. A bloodline drain, slow, irreversible. It's not irreversible. The words came out before she could stop them, and she saw his expression shift, the hope he wouldn't let himself feel, pushed down, held under. Sarah, don't. There is a counterbinding. Hedge witches developed it centuries ago. It requires someone with knowledge of the thorn network to reverse the siphon, to turn the drain back on itself. I've never performed it, but I was taught the theory, every step. He was quiet for a long time. Why didn't you tell me? Because it requires hedge magic. And you asked me, the first night, whether I was a hedge witch. I told you I wasn't one. That was true. But I was trained as one. I have the knowledge. I chose not to practice. And I was afraid that if I told you, you'd see me as a threat. Are you a threat to the thorns? Yes. He reached for her. His trembling hand found hers. Then be a threat. They talked until dawn. She explained the binding theory, how hedge thorns created networks between blood-related hosts, how the siphon could be reversed by rerouting the thorns in the caster rather than the victim. He told her about Wren's mother, a wolf shifter from the northern reach who had died bringing Wren into the world. He told her about Dr. Varren, who had arrived at the castle a year before Wren's curse with impeccable credentials and the endorsement of the southern court. He told her about the loneliness, not the word he used but the shape of it, of raising a child alone in a castle full of people who feared him. I have never told anyone this much, he said. It was nearly morning. The heather scent had softened between them. I know. I don't want to stop. Then don't. The next weeks were the best and worst of her life. Best because of Wren, who was growing stronger, gaining weight, laughing freely. Best because of Castiel, who came to her room every night and held her and slept, truly slept, for the first time in months. Worst because the tremor in his hands was spreading, and the bitter edge in the heather scent was deepening, and she could feel time closing around them both. Then Wren shifted again. Voluntarily this time. A joyful, spontaneous transformation during play, wolf to boy and back, his control improving daily. And Sarah watched Castiel watch his son run through the garden in wolf form, healthy and whole, and saw the thought cross his face before he could hide it. That night, he didn't come to her room. She found him in the throne hall, sitting on the floor again, in the same spot where they'd first touched. Wren is better, he said. He doesn't need the poultices anymore. He's controlling the shift on his own. Yes, and your purpose here was to heal him. You've done that. Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her. You think I'm going to leave? You have no reason to stay. You were hired as a maid. You became a healer. The healing is done. Castiel, I'm not asking you to stay out of obligation. I am telling you that I understand if... You think I'm here for Wren? He looked at her. His hands were shaking badly. Aren't you? I'm here for you. I've been here for you since the night on this floor. Wren brought me to the castle. You kept me. You'll leave, he said. Eventually. Everyone does. I was wrong. She knelt beside him. She took his trembling hands in hers. You told me you can't trust anything good. Let me be the thing that teaches you otherwise. His voice broke. Not with emotion, with something physical. His body seized, his back arching, his hands clenching around hers with a force that would have been bone-crushing if she hadn't pulled free. The bitter edge of heather flooded the room, overwhelming, toxic, and his eyes rolled back and he collapsed sideways onto the stone. Castiel! She caught his head before it struck the floor. His skin was no longer cool. It was cold, true cold, and the tremor in his hands had become a full-body convulsion. The siphon was accelerating. The thorns she'd removed from Wren had rerouted in Castiel, the network finding the next viable host in the bloodline. She had minutes. Listen to me. She held his face. His eyes were half open, unfocused. I told you I wasn't a hedge witch. I told you I didn't practice. That was true, but I lied about why. Tears tracked down her cheeks. I stopped practicing because my grandmother's coven was accused of cursing a noble family. They were executed, all of them. I survived because I was 12 and I hid. I've hidden ever since. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd connect me to the curse, and I'd be the next person accused instead of the last one left. His hand found hers. Barely. If I do this, if I reverse the siphon, I'm using hedge magic in front of the entire castle. Every person who ever wanted to blame a hedge witch for their problems will have a target. I'll never be safe again. His lips moved. Don't. I'm not doing this for safety. I'm doing it for you. How, he managed, could I not love you more for that? Save the rest of that sentence. You're going to finish it. She worked by instinct and memory and fury. She pressed her palms flat against his chest and reached, not with her hands but with the old knowledge, the buried craft, the thing she'd spent 15 years pretending she didn't carry. She felt the thorn network in his blood, traced its roots through his veins, found the central node, the original planting point, and followed it backward. It led to Varen, not a metaphor. The network had a signature, a magical fingerprint, and it matched the man who had spent 3 months watching a child suffer while pretending to search for a cure. Varen had planted the thorns. Varen had designed the siphon. Varen had been feeding on the Valdris bloodline's power, channeling it through the thorns and into himself. Sarah gripped the network with everything she had and reversed it. She felt the siphon strain, resist, and then shatter. A physical detonation that blew every window in the throne hall and sent a pulse of white-green light through the castle walls. The heather scent erupted, clean and fierce and purified, and Castiel gasped, a deep, desperate, lung-filling breath, and his body went still, not dead still, living still. The tremor stopped. His skin warmed under her hands. "Breathe," she said, again. He breathed. Somewhere in the castle, a man screamed. The guards found Varen in his chambers, collapsed, his skin blackened by the reversed siphon's backlash. Sarah's magic had redirected every thorn root back to its source, and the network had consumed its creator with the same patience it had used on a child. But Varen was alive and conscious, and when Castiel, supported by Sarah on one side and Margot on the other, entered the chamber, Varen was talking. "You don't understand what I am," Varen said. His voice was thin, wrecked. "My grandmother was a healer in this castle. Your grandfather dismissed her. She died in the street. My mother grew up with nothing because of your family's cruelty, and when she married a hedge witch, she told me. She told me to learn their craft, enter the castle, and take back what was stolen. You tortured a child," Castiel said. "I corrected an imbalance. The Valdris bloodline hoards power it doesn't deserve. The thorns redistributed it. The boy was a vessel. You were the target." He was 4 years old. Varen's jaw tightened. "Sacrifices are required, not of children." Castiel looked at the captain of his guard. "Take him. Trial in the morning. He does not leave the cell." "The hedge witch framed my family," Sarah said. Every person in the room turned to her. My grandmother's coven was accused of cursing a noble family. They were executed, all of them. She looked at Varen. "Your mother's husband was the hedge witch who cast that curse, and when the coven was blamed, he let them die to protect himself. My grandmother died for your family's crime." Varen said nothing. His silence was confirmation. "Take him," Castiel repeated. The guards dragged Varen from the room. The door closed. The heather scent settled, clean, soft, finally at peace. Castiel turned to Sarah. His color was returning. His hands were steady. He took both of hers and held them, and his grip was firm, warm, certain. "I love you," he said. "Complete, unbroken. I love you, and I will spend the rest of my considerably long life making certain you know it." "I love you too." Ren ran in 30 seconds later, barefoot, half-shifted, his wolf ears poking through his dark hair, and threw himself at Sarah's legs. She picked him up. Castiel wrapped his arms around them both. Margot, standing in the doorway, turned away and pretended to inspect the doorframe, but Sarah saw her press a hand to her mouth. The trial was held the following morning. Varin was convicted of attempted murder of a royal child, magical assault on the crown, and conspiracy to defraud. The evidence of the Thorn network, preserved by Sarah's reversal, was irrefutable. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in the Southern Court's magical containment facility, stripped of all craft and removed from the castle in chains. The investigation that followed uncovered Varin's full history, his mother's marriage into the hedge coven that had cursed the northern noble family, his father's role in allowing Sarah's grandmother's coven to take the blame, and the systematic erasure of evidence that had kept the truth buried for 15 years. Sarah's grandmother's coven was formally exonerated. Their names were entered into the castle's records with full honors. Sarah stood in the garden on the morning the official pardon arrived, holding the document in her hands, and felt something release in her chest that had been locked since she was 12 years old. Castiel found her there. He stood beside her and said nothing for a long time. "My grandmother would have liked you," Sarah said. "Why?" She always said the measure of a man was not his power but his willingness to limit it. "You gave me a lock for my door before you ever gave me a reason to open it." He took her hand. His skin was warm now, truly warm. The siphon gone, his body restored. The heather scent floated between them, clean and steady. In the garden, Wren shifted from boy to wolf and back again, chasing a butterfly, laughing, free. "Stay," Castiel said. "I already am. If you stayed for the whole story, you already know these characters got under your skin. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you there."